And so Mack was on his way. An 8-day journey across the Atlantic on a transport ship sounds like suicide for anyone easily queasy with motion sickness.
I was surprised how well I made this. The ocean was quite smooth, and we got one alert that there's a submarine in the area, so they let off a couple of depth chargers.
Leave it to Grandpa Goodman to nearly skip over a detail as dangerous as German U-boats shadowing a ship packed with Army personnel. But it wasn't so much the danger as the distance that worried Mack.
I told him, you know, that's getting too far in water, that ocean between me and home, and I'm not a good swimmer.
Upon arrival to the British Isles, Mack got his first look at a nation that not 4 years prior had been bombarded by the Blitz. But Nazi bombs couldn't crush the English spirit.
In every place where you go by where there was houses, they was putting up these signs, you know, victory. I didn't know what that's about. I just see them put up 2 fingers.
That fire of victory had been sparked just 3 months earlier by the Allied invasion of Normandy. It was mid-September when Mack crossed the English Channel, and the devastation of June 6, 1944 was still fresh on the French coast.
Man, that thing was well secured, and there was a lot of lives taken at the port where we was at. You could still see some of the remnants of the dugouts and things.
That port was Utah Beach in the Cherbourg region of northern France. Utah was one of the 5 beaches stormed by British, Canadian, and American soldiers as part of Operation Overlord, remembered forever as D-Day. Anywhere from 15 to 20,000 Allied and German troops were killed or wounded in a single day. The sight of this beach would be a sobering reminder to eager young GIs that they, too, would soon be at war. Members of the 26th Infantry were then transported by train. Some remained on patrol duty along the coast, while others, like Mack, were taken inland through Paris and on to the muddy French countryside. Allied forces had just launched a heavy offensive to drive the Nazis back toward Germany.
When we moved up to where the battle was really going on, the black boy was driving the truck, and we got close to a little place, and he said, "Okay, this is as far as I go. You're gonna be on your own from here now."
Mack's platoon was dropped off with their rifles, backpacks, ammunition belts, all of the essentials for battle, but one standard issue Mack knew he wouldn't need: condoms. Actually came in handy when the weather took a turn for the worse.
I found out a good way to use them right away. It started raining, and we were in single file about from here to that wall over there, spread out, because there'd been artillery, you know, coming into that area, and when you could hear them coming, the artillery. And one hit right in the back of our column, and I heard a few screams, and I had already hit the dirt on the other side, but I had to condom over the barrel to keep it protected.
It was now early October, and autumn had arrived in continental Europe. It was cold and wet as the boys of the 328th made their way eastward to relieve the 4th Armored Division in the Salon-Moncourt Canal du Rhin-Almond sector. Mack described the terrain as mountainous, and the roads were littered with bodies of both friend and foe.
There was dead bodies. I didn't know if they were American soldiers or German soldiers or what, but we were moving, so we knew we was in the battle, you know.
The unit's objective: take the strategic Nazi fortress city of Metz on the German border. Waves of troops had traveled the region, so when Mack's platoon set up camp for the night, foxholes had already been dug out from previous battles.
The push was on. The last thing I knew, we were going to Metz, Germany would be our next stop.
What Mack didn't know is that his platoon was taking a defensive position in what would later be known as the Battle of Moncourt Woods. It began on October 22nd as a type of siege to force the enemy to surrender. It was in this holding pattern that Mack found himself risking his life for some simple comforts from home: a A transport truck brought mail to the edge of the field where the 328th was hunkered down, and with no volunteers, Mack offered to run out and retrieve the letters. Thankfully, there were no Germans close by looking to pick off a generous American GI, and ironically, Mack didn't even have any mail in the bag. The waiting was over. The Allies were on the verge of launching an offensive to capture towns en route to Metz, and Mack was on the front line.
So now we went a little farther into a wooded area, forest, and we were in. And then there was an opening about the size of a football field. Anyway, that's how I sized it up, because I had seen a few football fields. It was a clearing. There was one dead tree out there in the center, but we were on guard all night, and I was one that was chosen, and I never got relieved. And it rained all night long, and it was freezing cold. And I said, I'm ready to go. Let's get after what we're going to do and get it done.
November the 8th, the morning of the big push. Mack may have been ready, but so were the Germans. Other veterans have described this day as a blood-soaked, muddy experience. It's also remembered as the day the Yankee division was almost defeated at Moncourt Woods, where the fighting was chaotic as the enemy engaged American soldiers on all sides. This chaos is what Mack would describe as an eyewitness to the carnage.
Here come out of the back brush some army, a big shot, and he says, "Get going, you guys, what are you waiting on?"
Mack and his fellow soldiers had been waiting for specific orders, and there they had them, get going. But no sooner had his platoon started their advance, that German machine gun fire began mowing soldiers down, as Mack would describe it, like sitting ducks.
Machine gun opened up over on the other side, so I went to the next deal. I'd been firing shots, and I needed to reload put in another clip in my rifle.
For an expert rifleman, Mack didn't have a specific target to shoot at as bullets were flying in from all directions. He saw some helmets of German soldiers along the tree line, but had little time to think, let alone aim at the enemy. Just as he was about to reload, a bullet ripped through Mack's back and out his shoulder. He fell behind a foxhole to avoid getting hit again, and it was in that terrifying moment that a scene forever scarred Mack's memory.
I went in back here
in the shoulder blade
and come out right here. My sergeant, he was just a little ways ahead of me there, and he was behind the one too, and I was hit. I was already hit and bleeding out my mouth and nose, and I was kind of paralyzed, and he stuck his head out and says, he called me Arizona. Says, "Hang on, Arizona, the medics will be coming," and about that time a bullet hit him right there, and he just flat. He never made another move.
He had witnessed his platoon sergeant shot to death. He couldn't move. He was alone on the battlefield and bleeding to death. Another soldier must have seen Mack go down, and he did what any soldier was ordered to do for an injured comrade. He shoved sulfanilamide or sulfa pills in his mouth. Those sulfa tablets were meant to fight off infection, but there was little else anyone could do in the middle of a firefight. As he lay there, darkness closing in, Mack called upon the one he knew could hear him, the only one who could save him in this moment of desperation.
I did remember often a little prayer. Father in heaven, if I can get out of this and get back home, I'll do whatever I'm called to do. And
at that moment, he lost consciousness.